Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to Urban Update. I'm Byron Barnett. On the show today, the first ever Latino 30 Under 30 will take place in November, and we'll give you all the details on who, what, and where. Also on the program, a recent survey of Lawrence area employers shines a light on what regional business leaders think about the economic future of that large gateway city just 30 miles north of Boston. But up first, a conversation about race. That was the title of a recent town hall type panel put together by Suffolk County Sheriff Steve Tompkins. It was held at Roxbury Community College to openly discuss these hot button issues. Now, the frank discussion, which took place on August 23rd, featured 12 guests from a wide range of sectors of the community, included law enforcement, media, elected officials, as well as civic leaders from the region's most prominent organizations, and a member of the clergy as well. To give us a detailed report on how it all went down, we went right to the source. Suffolk County Sheriff Steve Tompkins joins us this morning. Welcome to Urban Update, Sheriff.
Thank you, Byron.
Thanks for coming in.
Absolutely.
Well, first off, talk to me about why you put this whole event together. This event, a conversation about race. Why is a sheriff endeavoring in this area?
Because if you look at public safety, if you look at what we do, I see public safety as an intersection. And everything goes through that intersection. You're talking about politics, job training, housing, poverty, transportation. So we thought that it would make a lot of sense, since we deal with so many different constituencies, to pull this room together, as you said, with a diverse panel to talk about race, but not just talk about cops in the community. What we wanted to talk about was in the macro, everything that could possibly affect people as they go forward.
Now, did you have any people who were skeptical about putting something like this together?
My staff, frankly.
Really?
Yes, my staff, more so due to timing. Because we did it on August 23rd, we were coming up on the Labor Day weekend. So the thought was that we should do it after Labor Day when more people would be back in town. I thought that this is a conversation that just couldn't wait, and so that we should do it sooner than later.
What was your desired result for putting this together, and do you think you achieved it?
The desired result was to really keep the conversation going forward about race. This is not a one-off situation. You have to have this conversation daily, frankly. And so what we wanted to do is to show that our end of the law enforcement train, so to speak, is really engaged with the communities that we serve. And so when you say, did we get what we had hoped for? Yes. We had over 300 people there. We had a panel that was just very astute in their respective walks of life. And it was good conversation. We had questions that came in over the net, and people actually gave us questions that night, and they were extraordinary questions.
Who were some of the panelists? You don't have to name all of them, but some of the ones that...
Well, we had former Secretary of EOPS, Andrea Cabral. We had Alberto Vasaro from El Mundo newspaper. We had Mayor Danny Rivera from Lawrence. We had Terry Williams from First United Bank, Representative Evandros Cavallo, and we had actually Father Jack Ahern. And I wanted to have a Catholic priest because I wanted to have a different kind of look at this situation of race, not necessarily coming from a black pastor.
And sounds like you had a really good panel there, very diverse panel. Yeah. What are some of the topics that you hit on?
Housing, job training, incarceration, transportation, food deserts, so to speak. But then we also talked about feelings, and that's the important thing. How do you feel about race? How does this person feel about race? And we talked about the finer nuances. And one of the things that I had mentioned is this, and you may have heard this, 4 black guys walking down the street may be referred to as a gang of guys. 4 white guys walking down the street would be a group of guys. It's those finer nuances that people say every day, but don't realize that it may be offensive to other groups. And so that's what we wanted to talk about.
You talk about having this continuing conversation, but how important is it that just having the conversation, because it seems when you look at the dialogue that's going on, all the arguing and things, and the cable shows, just the discourse out there, right. It seems like people are talking past each other a lot.
But that's what's going to happen in the genesis of this conversation. And then people will get tired about talking past one another and want to talk about solutions. And so, but before that happens, you have to break people's tolerance level down. And so everybody's got to get the emotion out of the way, and then you can get to some real concerted conversation.
What about, here's one issue. Did you, anybody talk about body cameras, or do you have any opinions on that? That's something that's sort of come up lately in this whole discussion about race.
Absolutely, and interestingly enough, one of the panelists was Superintendent-in-Chief Willie Gross. And the first question I asked him was about body cameras, And here's my thing on the body cameras. I do believe that the Boston police should have the body cameras for a variety of reasons.
And again, I should pause because, you know, you're obviously black, but you're also, don't forget, you are in public safety
Right.
as well. And that's the area, that's the intersection where there's been clashes in this whole Black Lives Matter movement.
Right. But if you look at what's happening in the city of Boston, if you look at what Mayor Walsh is doing and Commissioner Evans, when something happens, they bring in the community leaders, they bring in the clergy, they have conversation. If they have video, they show them the video. And then those advocates can go back to their respective communities and talk about the fact that the power that be, so to speak, actually had them in and talked about what's going on. And I think that's one of the reasons that we haven't had one of these Donnybrooks here in Boston.
You think Boston actually is making progress in this area and is seriously dealing with the whole question of race so things don't blow up like they have in other cities?
I think they're making progress, but here, let's go back to, I believe it was 1973 when you had that big disruption around busing.
Of course.
And people today still think that Boston is a racist city because of what happened with busing. And so that's why that conversation needs to continue on a daily basis. But yes, in answer to your question, I do think that Boston is a little further down the field than some other states and cities.
Here's another one. How about this whole issue that everyone's talking about? It's pretty current now. Quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers, Colin Kaepernick, choosing not to stand up for the national anthem.
Yeah. Well, so you know what? I follow that under the heading of the squeaky wheel gets the oil, so to speak. And I think what he did was, I think to a degree, productive. Because once again, it keeps that conversation going. Now, I part company with him saying that he's going to do this in every game all the time. Look, it's the national anthem, it's the flag, we are Americans. It's just my opinion. I have no jurisdiction over him, but I think he should stand.
Is there any conflict in choosing to stand up for the flag yourself and supporting Colin Kaepernick at the same time?
No. I don't think you mean any internal conflict on my part?
Oh, not on anybody's part. I mean, in general, I mean, do you think is there a conflict?
Yeah.
Is it hypocritical to say I'm going to stand up for the flag, but I don't fault Colin Kaepernick for doing it?
And I say this: I mean, this is our country as Americans, and I think that we should honor the flag, honor the national anthem, while at the same time saying, I understand what the young man is trying to say. Let's listen to him and let's talk about it.
Okay, all right. Any plans for a follow-up on this at all?
Yes, and as a matter of fact, we've been asked a number of times whether or not we're going to do more of these. But I think what we'll do the next time, Byron, my jurisdiction is Chelsea, Winthrop, Revere, and Boston, and so we may do this in a smaller venue. We had over 300 people this time. I'd like to do something with 40 or 50 or 60 people, and where you can have more of an interchange and exchange with the people in the audience. So yes.
What kind of response have you gotten?
It was extraordinary. Well, actually, there were a number of live tweets during the event, and people basically said, you know, that they thought that not only was this a conversation that needed to be had and should continue, but they were really enamored with the quality of the personalities that were on the panel to come forth and talk about what they talked about. And everything wasn't sweetness and light. You know, I mean, there were some contentious moments, but it never got out of hand.
And what about yourself? Did you learn anything personally? Did you personally learn anything from the panel that you didn't know before, or that just something that made you think a little bit more?
Well, no. For this reason, prior to working in the Sheriff's Department, I was in your line of work in communications for 20 some odd years. And so I'm pretty well steeped in the conversation. What I wanted to have happen was to have people come, the panelists, and the audience to come and really talk and listen. So no, there wasn't anything that was earth-shattering or eye-opening to me other than people were engaged and they left there continuing the conversation.
And why do you think it is so important to continue this conversation?
Because white people, black people, Asians, Latinos, LGBT, we're all here and we're not leaving. So we need to figure out a way to get along and talk amongst each other. And if you look at what's happening globally around the world, Americans don't need to be at each other's neck. We really need to have each other's back.
Okay, sounds like you guys did some pretty important work there. Steve Tompkins, Sheriff of Suffolk County, thanks for coming in, and congratulations on putting that event together. Hope to see more of them like that in the future.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, coming up next, the Latino 30 Under 30, recognizing some of the brightest young leaders in business, sports, fine arts, and so much more. All the details in just a few, right here on Urban Update.